Well, The Sheen on the Silk is your biggest and most ambitious standalone novel of all time. Where did all of that, fantastic collection of politics and sensuality and history all come together?
Well, it was suggested to me by my two agents. We get together once or twice a year, have a summit meeting, that I try doing a standalone, which is exciting, it's fun. You've got to do something different, not just so that people don't say, ho hum, she wrote the 25th so-and-so, but it's good for you. It's good for the writer to do something different, a challenge. Can I do this or not? Let's see. And we thought historical. It needed to have some crime and that sort of essence to it. And several periods were suggested. I thought, no, don't know enough about that. Everybody knows about that. I'm not interested, or nobody cares about that. And I've got a couple of periods which I would love to do, but I'm told at the moment nobody's interested. And I think it was you suggested, well, what about Byzantium? I thought, yes, what about Byzantium? And then my brother came up with the particular period, because it ends with the massacre of the Sicilian Vespers in 1282. But Byzantium was under grave threat of attack by Charles of Anjou. And the people had only just got back in 1262 they went back. And I started 1273. They still hadn't restored the city after the dreadful sack of 1204. Because every time the Crusaders go east, they stop off at Byzantium and give them absolute hell. Because the Byzantines were Orthodox, and of course most of Western Europe is Roman Catholic, and they didn't see it as the same religion. So they thought, absolutely fair game, we can do anything we want to them. Burn them, pillage them, loot everything they've got, rape the women, stable the horses in their cathedral, anything, and steal, like the 4 bronze horses for the Quadriga, now adorning St. Mark's, or particularly the Shroud of Turin. Lots of things. So it's a city that's highly civilized but facing a coming darkness, which we all know happened, particularly from its own religious division with Rome, facing dominance by a religion that would impose from a considerable distance, because I know Rome's not so very far from Istanbul, but by sea then it jolly well was, 6-8 weeks minimum. And also, of course, they're facing the rise of Islam, which was only another 100 and what years before it completely conquered them. So in some ways it mirrors an awful lot of problems that we have in different places today. Religious conflict, fear of people who will dominate us who are different, and the fear of a religion that's different and we don't really understand, but it is very, very powerful. How much do you love your particular denomination of religion? Enough to die for it? Well, quite a few people would do that. But how about sacrificing your city, your culture, your family? Would you allow your parents, your children, to be sacrificed for it? That's a different thing. Do you have the right to? Do you really believe that if you follow your particular conscience that God will save you? History doesn't suggest that that's going to be the case. Lots of people have suffered. I don't think God ever said it isn't going to hurt.
No, that's very true.
Yes. So,
but I also love the dualities in the book. The way your main character is a woman, but she is pretending to be a certain sort of man. That there's the Roman Church and the Orthodox Church, the male presence, the male face of God, and the female face of God. The sort of straight down the line type of dogmatic Catholicism against a much more sort of intuitive, much gentler type of almost female sort.
Well, if the answers were easy, it wouldn't be worth asking the question, would it?
No, true.
And you can see the good and the bad in both of them, in all of them. And I don't think Anna, I suppose, is who I would like to be. When you say our character's autobiographical, very often they're not who we are, but they're who we would like to be.
Yes, perhaps.
Well, for the courage and the integrity and the honour we would like to be. And she does discover one or two things that she's fighting very hard to prove turn out not to be quite the way she thought.
Yeah, she's really up against it.
She is really up against it. She has some very difficult decisions. And of course she doesn't fall in love with a man. And she is pretending to be a man, specifically a eunuch. and that was the very last days of the great power of the eunuch. But if there's anything to kind of kill a romance, it's to have the bloke you're in love with think you're another bloke.
Yes, absolutely.
And like you, and as a friend, and then tell you things he would never tell you if he knew you were a woman.
Yes.
Another character that I care about very much, about the creation of, was Constantine the Bishop, who ends up loving the church and missing out on loving God.
Yes.
And it's so easy to confuse the two and feel that if you're serving your church, you must be serving God. Not necessarily. You may and you may not. Because it happens, and it is still happening and probably always will, that people will do things to protect the good name of the church that they couldn't justify to God.
Yes, that's a very good point.
Well,
Not just the church either.
Yes, but it's so easy to do.
Yes.
And that is a tragic story. But the one that was the most fun to write was Zoe.
Well, she really steals the show.
Yeah. Well, she's something...
Oh, my word.
She's something about my age. I imagine her to be totally beautiful. Outrageously beautiful, even still.
Yes.
And she actually, as a tiny child, saw the Crusaders sack Byzantium. And she saw the city in flames and the holy thing she loved desecrated. She saw her mother raped and killed in the street. And she lives for revenge. She does outrageous things. But
well, a little bit of poison between friends. I mean,
yes, exactly. And in cleverest ways so that you actually get away with it. You're terrified, sick that God's going to punish you. Yes. So you go and pray in the Hagia Sophia and a shaft of sunlight. Oh, I'm forgiven. It's all right. Let's go and do it again. But she was enormous fun to write. And I still felt as if the lights had gone out when she had to go.
Yes, absolutely. But she's a very good vehicle for our sense of intrigue in a place like Byzantium, where it's so international and...
So sophisticated. End of the Silk Road and the Spice Road. And the Latins were barbarians. We were barbarians compared with them.
Yes.
It was very interesting doing some of the research. Thinking, well, okay, she gets up in the morning. What is she lying on? She's lying on a jolly nice stuffed mattress.
Yes.
What does she, when she swings out her feet to stand on the floor? Very nice tiled floor, thank you. And then she goes, does she have to go down to the street for a well? Does she have to go to the river for water? No, thank you. She's got running water and a close to a flush toilet.
Yes, well, our ancestors were far from stupid.
Yes. Indeed.
A sort of huge shining light of civilization at the time.
It was. And complex, subtle, with all sorts of different races.
Yes. Well, there were colonies of different nationalities, weren't there?
And she was a physician. And I had such fun with the medicine.
Well, the Jewish medicine as opposed to the Catholic medicine, which was fascinating.
The Christian medicine was, if you're sick, you must have done something very wicked. You better find out what it was quickly, repent of it, and I'll give you some medicine. But mostly you're going to repent and you're going to pray specifically to the saint of that particular disorder. Then you'll be all right. But the Arabic and the Jewish doctors, much more like modern medicine. You've got something the matter with you, you give you the medicine that will help you recover from it. But the interesting thing was, if you were a Christian, you were in very, very deep trouble indeed if you went to a Jewish or an Arabic doctor, unless you got a special dispensation which would allow you to do so. And are you amazed to find out that the Pope and all the bishops and so forth had such dispensations?
Yes, I was waiting for that.
It's a time and a place of tremendous mixture of cultures, sometimes clashing, sometimes intermingling very well.
But quite a technical feat to juggle, in fact, 5 main characters. And the point was to make something really interesting and epic and just really, big, really allow you to spread your wings.
Well, I had quite a lot of help. But yes, I planned the journey of each character, and they all had fairly big journeys because the story takes 11 years. And each major step in any particular character's journey had to be affected very occasionally by actual historical happenings, but mostly by interaction with the other characters, so that you couldn't really pick out a thread and get rid of it. That was the idea.
Yes, it's almost like writing a symphony.
Yes, I imagine it would be. Yes, because if you get rid of any part of it, the thing is off balance.
Yes, and the strands have to interweave and come together at a point of most stress.
Yes, and I tell you what was fun as well. because Michael Palaeologus, the Byzantine emperor, had to be very, very clever and subtle to survive at all. And I kept thinking, well, for plot purposes, if I were in his position, knowing what I know from hindsight, I would have made him do this and that and the other. I think, well, is there anything to prove that he didn't? No, there's nothing to prove that he did, so let's make him do it. Mm-hmm. Right, that works beautifully. And they're like, there's another book I can read, and fine, he did do it. That happened over and over.
Yes, well, you obviously tuned into him in that case.
Well, he wasn't as silly as you might think.
No,
Very,
of course.
A bit of a brutal man,
mm-hmm.
but it was a lot of research in different places. Some of it was very, very difficult because, of course, we are before the Renaissance. Mm. Can you find, and I know you can't because you tried at the time, to find a ground plan or anything to describe the Vatican at that time?
Absolutely.
St. Peter's, I know there were steps going up, but that's about all. Mm. And because it's set in Rome, Venice, Byzantium, Jerusalem, Naples, and a little bit in Sicily, finding Jerusalem wasn't so difficult. And I do actually have a scene at Golgotha, but I'm kind of pleased with. And at sea travel. But in Venice, how many bridges were there then? It was only about one.
Really?
Yeah. And what did the Doge's Palace look like then? Not the way it does now. Mm-hmm. We look at, Doge's Palace, beautiful pictures of the golden stairway. Oh no, that's Renaissance. So
I know, it's tough going back that far.
It is, because so much has been marvellously rebuilt.
And quite a lot of weird historical things to wrestle into some sort of shape, because didn't they go through something like 5 popes in about 2 years?
Yes, they did.
The roof fell down on one and killed him, and
yes, so they kept coming and going as fast as you could get a letter to him. He wasn't there.
Yes, and
they had 3 in 1 year.
It seems to strain credulity, but on the other hand, it's historical fact, and you've got to
deal with it.
Make it into fiction without being too repetitive. It's
yes,
one of those curveballs that history threw you there.
And the other sort of thing that makes it very difficult, it's going to take 6 weeks at least to get from Byzantium to Rome. And you can't hear of something 3 weeks after it happened when it takes 6 weeks for the news to get there, and that's if you're lucky.
Yes.
So I had to take my people around in different places and do it from different points of view, and try never to trip myself up with having somebody know something before they possibly could.
Well, and time lags where you need to pick up the action, but in fact there's been a 6-week gap because they're just sat on a boat doing nothing.
Took quite a lot of planning and then replanning and replanning.
It was quite a thing to wrestle. I know you had quite a lot on your hands there.
But it was fun.
Oh,
it was a great challenge, and it was a lot of fun. And we had fun, if you remember, going to Byzantium, Constantinople.
Absolutely, yes.
Seeing the Hagia Sophia and seeing the cisterns to get the taste and the smell and the feel of it.
Yes, it's unique.
Yes,
well,
it is.
The light, I think that was the first thing that you remarked on, was that fantastic light of the Bosphorus.
And wanting to go, we went on a car journey across and up the coast to the Black Sea.
Oh, that's right.
And we were on the ruins of a castle. And it was surreal to me because I live in the north of Scotland, and I looked at this grey stone ruins of a castle, and I looked at the scrub, which was mostly bramble, bracken, gorse, exactly what I would find in the north of Scotland.
Yes.
So I remember asking the guide and saying, when did you get this vegetation here? And he said, it's always been here.
Yes, so not imported from Scotland.
Not imported from Scotland at all.
Yes. Yes, it's a funny coincidence.
And I thought, nobody's going to believe me with this.
Yes. Well, maybe there was a sort of weird resonance between you and Byzantium. Who knows?
Well, I enjoyed it enormously, and it's great fun and very satisfying, a completely different exercise to write a story that when you come to the end of it, that's the end. Everybody's journey is completed. You close it, there's no more to say.
Yes.
And you can go for broke.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I did.
Yeah.